Okay, welcome everybody to the September 7th legislative meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. I'll be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councilor Warwa, is there any additions or deletions?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to postpone any further discussion on the library board bylaw so that we can actually take this into a little bit deeper depth now that we have some opinion that maybe the 9-89 bylaw didn't actually create a board. I want to just look into this a little more.
Okay, so what you're requesting is items 9.4, 9.5 be taken off the agenda until we have more conversation about it.
Yes.
Forward. Okay, thank you. Seeing no other hands in the air, all those in favor? Thank you. Next up is the adoption of our minutes of our last legislative meeting, and I'll take a motion. Councillor Lemko, thank you very much. Is there any errors or omissions within those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, our first delegation is Mrs. Rachel Pehatch. Hello, Rachel.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to be understood that I take this matter very seriously, in no way mean any disrespect for any of the parties involved. I just wish to bring the facts before you in perspective and value both your time and mine, presenting the issues and circumstances and hoping for a positive result. And thank you for your time and attention in advance. There was some additional paperwork given you today with regards to my presentation. 4 pages in the presentation itself, and then 4 of my additional references listed as item 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. And then I believe you have a previous package that was given with regards to pictures and an invoice, and part of the notices that are in my name. So I will proceed, and I guess followed with questions, correct?
You go ahead, yep, we've all read the first part. We just got these handed to us this.
Yeah, I left them for reference because
Okay.
there's a lot of information, and I just felt this a bit simpler for you guys to review after if you like, or just to ask questions from.
Okay.
Okay, so presentation information, notification process. Issues on how notification was administered on property 4314 49A Street. The property is registered in the above 2 names as joint tenants, being myself, Rachel Pehatch, and my brother, Carl Yarchik. As such, both parties are required to be formally notified when maintenance letters are sent. I have been registered as the town as the primary contact for the last 15 years, but this notification process was not followed. Item 1A, notice to maintain property dated June 3rd, 2021, sent to Rachel. I have included my notes on the page to show history and record of my reception and compliance of this notice. I have had discussions in the past years with the bylaw officers and was told once the work is completed, no follow-up is required to them. Compliance was completed on the dates beginning between June 4th and July 23rd, as noted on 1A. Item 1B, notice to maintain property dated June 3rd, 2021, sent to Carl. The address on this letter is not even in Vegreville. It is a different community altogether. Even though Carl has been living at this above address for over 12 years, he did not receive a copy of this notice. All formal notices are to be received at the legal address. Item 2A, notice of entry dated June 21st, 2021, supposedly sent to me. I will swear on whoever or whatever is required that I did not receive this notice. I would also ask for proof as how to this notice was delivered to me. Anyone that knows me in this community for over 30 years knows that we would not even all be here now if I had actually been aware of the issue. My time is just as valuable as yours, and as stated, I have already been diligent and complied with item 1A. Because of the first notice had been addressed, I felt the situation was taken care of. If I had been issued the second notice, I would have notified the officers of the fact of a compliance, and any further concerns would have been addressed at that time. Also, a new notice of maintenance would have been required, as explained to me in the past by the bylaw officers. Item 2B, notice of entry dated June 21st, sent to Carl. The address on this letter is still not in Vegreville. I was not aware of this notice of entry until after the contractor had entered the property. This is all on accounts is not valid or a legal process of delivery of service. I again would have to question the validity of following the correct procedures. Your bylaw process needs to have better communication and follow-up with the residents of the property in question. This in turn would only promote better relations between all parties involved and a community as a whole. Item 5, please be aware of all the dates of mowing posted on item 1 that I have referenced. Everyone should also be aware of how dry the weather was between June and July and the provincial drought disaster conditions. Any further cutting other than noted would have caused more damage than good, and this would have also been an issue to consider and discuss when trying to follow local bylaws. Provincially, by law, as a property owner, if I have to enter my own property for any reason with a tenant, I am legally required to give 24-hour verbal in person to all tenants. Or if I must in writing, I must post securely to the property and give a copy of notice of entry to 2 of the adjoining neighbors as proof. This is for any reason that I enter under the Landlord and Tenants Act. Work completed by the owner. I did complete the required compliance as requested between June 4th and July 23rd. There is no requirement for me to verify the work from my end. There is, however, an expectancy of proper communication from the officer issuing the notice to be valid in who and how the notices are being sent. They are also required to follow up with the contractors that are entering the property, how the work is completed and the services they are charging for. I do not believe either was followed in good faith or confidence. As the owner and taxpayer, I do have rights to protect and enjoy my own property. For example, if I am planting new grass, I have the right to be organic and reseed the grass as directed for best results. The backyard was not open to the public. It was not likely to cause injury to another or pose a danger. The sidewalks were open without debris. The policy has of no grass over 15 centimeters or 6 inches is wrong and detrimental for anyone trying to organically establish growth on a newly seeded area or during a drought condition. Or if I had decided to raise dandelions to help promote regeneration and pollination for the bee population, do the policies not understand the importance of organics or of bees? If there are restrictions on grass height, why is there no restrictions on weed height and some of the town's own property responsibilities? You can't expect a property owner to be responsible for sidewalks and boulevard weed maintenance when the construction and condition of these have not been looked after correctly on the town's end to begin with. Another issue is why the weeds were left around the house amongst the flowers and the overgrown flower beds and retaining walls. We have had an ongoing issue for many years with cats of neighbors on both sides trespassing, then defecating, urinating, and spraying on the property. We have had to cover the flower beds with metal screening. We've tried trapping and catching. We have used noise and other deterrents. None of these solutions worked. The town has been made aware of an ongoing issue of having no cat bylaw throughout the community for several years. When the area was cut, the violation damage persisted. When the plants were left in the condition of the pictures, it has stopped the trespassing and the disgusting damage. Even your own bylaw number 493, controlling the nuisance of animals at large, hasn't been updated to April of 1993. I have been left with thousands of dollars of damage for this existing issue, or for this exact issue, with no response or recourse other than taking the issue to court because the problem with the lack of responsibility and inconsistency on the bylaws. Invoices by tendered subcontractors submitted. Please note the invoices included I have several concerns with this matter. If you refer to the date the work was completed, July 25th, 2021, this was on a Sunday. I was not made aware of this notice of entry of the property, and your policies cannot leave this to the third party or an uninformed process of being served to the owner. Also, I do not feel any person under the town has a right to enter your property to do work on my religious day of rest. There is no reference in the bylaw giving them or anyone else the right or any specified times of entry to a private property. But again, more questions of concern in right, authority, and consistency. Also, the bylaw itself has no transparency. The information of who the contractor is, what their estimate of work or costs of service performed would be, the actual legitimacy of the work completed on an invoice that was incurred, astronomical charges. Example, what is being charged for a truck to sit while work is being completed by laborers. Equipment being charged at excessive rates above provincial standards. No work estimates given rather than actual invoices. Laborers' billing rates higher than you pay your own employees to do the same job. There is no reference within the bylaw itself as to or for what myself as an owner, a taxpayer, would possibly be charged or what is being billed for to me. Why is this information not available to me as an owner that is expected to pay the bill? This seems irresponsible and deceptive by the town's questionable bylaw and authorities. When I expressed my concerns to your bylaw manager why there's no information available possibly for possible costs to the owner, I was told I was lucky I did not receive additional penalties that are not even referenced in your Schedule A specified perils. The appalling condition the property was left in once the service by the subcontractor was complete. Sidewalks were left covered with grass and weeds in an unsafe and injury-prone condition. Grass and weed seeds were left behind for the owner to clean up, both on the front and the back. This was a major concern as Carl has a physical disability and the grass left behind was a risk factor and insurance liability. You can refer to the completed pictures for reference. If this is the situation and condition a subcontractor is allowed to leave a completed job, where is the work ethic, business responsibility? The subcontractor works for the town. Is this the result as a representative of the professional of the work that the town of Vegreville stands behind? I would never pay a neighbor boy or any professional landscaper to do this type of work or the exorbitant rates on the invoice that were sent to me. Would you as individuals or business owners? In summary, I received one formal notice to maintain the property. I complied and completed the work on several occasions between June 4th and July 23rd. If the standards of that work fell in question, why did I not receive the correct notice? Why did the subcontractor even enter the property when the work was complete? Why is there no formal policy for the town's employees that their role is to have good communication and contribute to a positive, safe, and secure town environment? Once I made it aware of the results of the subcontractor's invoice, I contacted the bylaw officer for an explanation. His reply was not acceptable as a representative of this town. I was in contact with him regarding another matter during this time. Not once, even in a courtesy, did he mention any concerns with Carl and the property. I tried to get more information on how this all came about and was directed to the department manager. I had a meeting to go through the issues and got very little direction or explanation of the situation and internal bylaw limitations and inconsistencies. I felt that there was enough concern to address you as a council and formally request the withdrawal of the work invoice because the procedures had not been followed correctly. I also do not take this situation lightly. I made a point of contacting several bylaw supervising officers in the communities of St. Paul, Vermilion, Manville, Viking, Camrose, and Ardrossan. I also reviewed some of their bylaws and see what comparisons or improvements could be added to the town of Vegreville and feel that there are several changes and improvements, some of which I have addressed here today and that could be added or combined with your own bylaws. In respect to how this notice was enforced, I believe changes and improvements and simple communication and direction would have stopped this situation from getting us here. I believe honest communication would keep an open and encouraging rapport between the town representatives and the people living within the communities that they are charged with looking after. My tax dollars are used to look after these issues, and as such, I feel I can expect a respectful interaction with the town employees, and my concerns and questions are addressed. In this and other matters that I was involved with this was not the case. In considering the actions of the bylaw officer, future matters, I would have to ask them to consider the reputation and quality of service and integrity its employees and their skills and abilities to perform in their duties and the communication with us as residents and taxpayers of Vegreville. I've been a part of this community and involved in many aspects for a long time, and I believe my concerns and points of issue are valid ones. There have been many changes over the last year with COVID-19 that as a town, there should have been more awareness and consideration. These aspects are affecting all ages of the community, these being mental and physical health problems, addiction issues and loss of financial stability, work and living restrictions in point, those that have and those that had none or no choice. I wish to thank you for your time in listening to me on these matters and hope for a positive result and relations moving forward. Sincerely, Rachel P. Hatch, and representing Carl Yarchik.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So regarding the matter, there was a lot of topics that you brought up in here. You're not happy with a lot of stuff
Well,
that the town works,
there's a lot that can be corrected or updated or made in a more positive direction for not only the town to save them time in dealing with these matters because they have a lot of different residents and different issues to deal with, but also for the property owners to have more understanding of what the direction is on the town's part and who would be doing what.
Okay, well, we're not here to solve all those problems. We're here to talk about the process that you were served on the piece of property that you and your brother jointly own.
Yes.
Okay. And what condition was left there by the contractor, that's something that we will take care of on our own. I mean, the fact that you pointed this out, and we will find out exactly what condition it was left, and that's something we will deal with. But what we really need to deal with is the real issue is that you say that you were not properly notified and that you had cleaned it up many times during the 50 days, the 4th to the 23rd, that you had the grass has been cut in there and everything was...
I even have a neighbor that couldn't be here because he had to go see his mom in long-term care, but he was willing to be, I guess, evidence that he did come in the 3rd week of July to do a trim on the front of the yard, but he had the mower high because of the factor that it was so dry. And he had taken the top end of the grass and weeds off at whatever the highest height of his lawnmower was. And I had been maintaining the back alley area and from the side of the garage on a regular basis, which is noted on 1A. I went through a lot of time and trouble trying to replace grass that had been damaged the fall before through trying to use some local weed control sprays that did not work. They killed most of my grass. And so we reseeded. I have some information in September of last year. And when I talked to a couple greenhouses about the best recourse once the grass came in, they just said, keep watering it until it gets as high as it can to get into seed and let it continue to choke out the weeds, which is what we were trying to do. And I had been cutting sort of around the sidewalk area so that there weren't any issues, and those sidewalks were cut. Just the grass between the house and the garage wasn't, because we reseeded that one part. And it's not visually open to anyone. There is trees from the front that close off the view. There's fences from both sides. There's about a 2-foot walk space between the garage and my brother's vehicle to be able to come into the backyard, and behind that area was all cleaned up and all cut. So I don't understand how this all came to be.
Okay, so we were supplied with pictures before and after of the property. Mm-hmm. And so, does anybody have any questions right now for Mrs. P. Hatch here? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess I appreciate the time and effort that you've put into preparing this presentation for us. And I guess it would be important for me to understand, the mayor has pointed out some of the things that we can look into or discuss further. I'm just curious what outcome you're looking for. What specifically are you looking for?
Well, I have major concerns with the factor that I complied to the first notice. I didn't have any awareness of any notice to entry, so anything after that, I would have to be questioning, wouldn't have come about, so there wouldn't be a bill. I realized that there is some justification in the work that was completed at the front of the yard. My understanding from my brother was that the younger fellow had mowed up the front of the yard, but from the area where the planters and the sidewalk comes to the side of the house, all the way to the back of the front of the garage, none of that had been cleaned up or completed in my agreement as a job. If somebody had been required as me as an owner to come in and do that job, they wouldn't have been paid at all for or a very small portion for the job they left behind. And that was my concern. I have to now look at how I'm going to treat the reproduction of my grass, whether it's going to come through now. It was cut down quite short, and then everything was left over the area that was reseeded, which anyone knows when you are trying to do that, you don't want to leave any debris on top, and so that the growth can come back. So we have to clean that up. I have to agree that there is some representation here on the town's end, but there isn't a lot of information as to why we're here, except for the factor that I didn't receive proper notices. And had I been given the formal notices, which I have for like 16 years, the last time I got a notice on the property was last June. The work was completed and I left history on my sheet throughout the rest of the summer just to show what was done on the property in case there were any concerns. And in this case, a similar situation happened. I did try and address it with the main bylaw officer, and to be honest with you, the response I got from him, including that and other matters, was not very friendly. It was not very accepting of me calling to find out, well, what do I do? I wasn't aware this was going to happen. I've now got concerns and damages that have been brought about by a contractor that, by all intents and purposes, I could consider a trespasser because I wasn't given those notices. My brother has physical and issues from his accident when he hit a moose 17 years ago that have been complicating and getting worse as he's gotten older, but he's never been the primary caretaker of this property. It's always been my concern, and because I don't think I got the appropriate notice of entry, anything after that is kind of separate.
Okay, Garrett, can I ask you a question? Did Rachel's brother get a notice? Well, sure.
Yes, Your Worship. On July 7th was the final time that I met with Mr. Carl Yarchuk. And that's when I brought the contractor with me and introduced him to Carl. And we went over pricing, and we told Carl the contractors were going to be in there later that evening, which they were, and that's when the work was completed, on July 7th.
Was that a Sunday?
No, that was not.
So the invoice was written on a Sunday, is that what
The invoice, yes, the invoice was written later in July.
Okay, and when the contractor was done, Garrett, did you go by and take a look at it? Was a lot of material left all over the sidewalks and sorry about that.
Sorry. Yeah, so I did, I do verify all the properties, so I went back on, next time I was available to go back was on July 9th at 8:50 in the morning. And that's when I took the after photos of the property, front and back.
Okay. Is there anything notice on this property that Carl is not the principal contact? Does it say that anywhere that we should always get a hold of Mrs. Pihatch and not deal with the resident? Like, is that something that you
That's-
expect us to know, or is
The
it?
town has me listed as the primary contact on the tax notification. My brother's not even on this notice. He's never received a tax notice. My name has been on this as a valid owner for many years. The town sends the water bill to me. Nothing is addressed to my brother. He is only 10% owner on this property, as part of the property, I guess, title. And I've always been the main notifier. I've had several discussions with Garrett in the past regarding grass, weeds, snow. I come 25 minutes out of town, make a special trip in, check the property over. My husband comes in a separate vehicle with lawnmower and weed eater and help, and takes care of trees that need to be cut, whether along the alley, weeds that I've actually addressed with the town with Brad with regards to weeds, then trees that are growing in my sidewalk due to contractor problems and not having construction done completely. And I can speak on this because I've worked in road construction for 32 years.
Well,
I know
that's,
I
we're
know
not
what that
getting
is,
into
right?
to that. We're trying to stick to the issues here. And what you're saying was, we were negligent in, and that's what we can deal with. We can only deal with
Yeah.
what's here is what's real.
Yeah.
So Garrett, did you know anything about, Carl not supposed to be the primary contractor?
So, your worship, we send all of our letters to all the property owners on title. In this case, there is 2 property owners. A specific letter was sent to both owners. The entry letter, which was then served on June 21st, that one gets served upon the property. So on June 21st, I attended that property. I met with Mr. Carl Yarchuk, and I served him both entries for notice of entry 48 hours later, that we were going to bring in a contractor 48 hours later. Between June 23rd and July 7th, I met in person with Carl on the property 4 to 5 times and kept giving him extensions to cut the grass. Ultimately, he was not able to cut it, and on July 7th, we sent in the contractor to cut it.
Okay, so Rachel, were you aware that, on June the 21st, that Carl was served with a notice, and he was served,
No.
given extensions and extensions?
No, when I did contact the bylaw office and talk to Ken, he had told me that the paperwork had been sent, that they had been in contact with him on several occasions that I was not aware of, and that the notices had been given appropriately. My notice on item 2B was never sent to me or received, my notice of entry. I never received that. I've received all kinds of other maintenance on other properties that I own. I have 8 properties in town, and when I've had other issues, they've all come to me without any problem or delay. I don't know what happened in this issue. My brother explained that somebody had stopped by. He had no recollection of the actual conversation. And I found this out after the contractor had already come to the property.
So he didn't, remember that anybody was there, or that there was paperwork involved that was handed to him?
No, and when I asked him to go through his papers, he did find some paperwork, but he had no recollection as far as how it was given to him. He just said it had a yellow sticky note on it, and he couldn't remember where it had come from or how it had been given. My concern was that I did look after my own properties during that time, so I was coming in and doing the backyard, and the beginning of June to end of July, we were growing from the back of the house to the front of the garage area. We were growing the grass out, so for me, it wasn't out in the open, it wasn't a concern. I thought we were gonna continue to wait till it came into seed. The front of the yard had some issues with weeds, but as far as the flower beds, I addressed that in the report, and I had been keeping the height cut as high as I could without killing the grass off.
Okay, well, there is, obviously, well, the pictures we've seen before the contractor went in, there was a lot of weeds and the grass was high.
And that was the part that I was trying to even kind of figure out when I had my meeting with the manager, because there's no documentation to show, well, when were these pictures taken? I don't know what I'm discussing or trying to work out when I've been in constant communication with my brother. I've done the constant work, and I don't know where this discrepancy came about. And the documentation that I got after the work was complete at the end of July states July 25th, which is a Sunday. I don't know why anybody, it says property cleanup, July 25th. So the information that Garrett was giving is different than what I received.
And again, that would have been the date of the invoice from the contractor, probably. I mean, that's, the work was done. I mean, so Garrett, let me ask you this. We have a procedure with our bylaw. Do you feel that we did exactly what we were supposed to do?
Yes. Yep, the maintain letters get sent to our addresses that we have on file. And then once I revisit that property, which I did on June 21st, the notice of entry gets served to the property. If I can meet with someone, that's what I do, and that's what I did in this case. And that's when I met with Carl throughout those 4 or 5 visits.
So Rachel didn't get a notice of entry mailed to her. You just, what you did on site with Carl is what our normal procedure is.
That is correct. The notice of entries never get mailed. They get served to the property
To the
in
person.
person. Yep.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, Rachel, thank you for coming in. You will hear back from us in a written letter that explaining to you what how we're gonna address this and how we'll move forward with it.
Okay, and just if there are any other concerns or questions, or if anything,
Well, you've given us quite a history here, believe me, but if there is, we will get hold of it.
I've been dealing with the bylaw officers as best as I can. I call the town for direction, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do if people are leaving debris on the back of my property, and I've removed it several times and it's still there. Or if they have an issue and I'm not understanding what exactly they want me to do. The notice states cut the front and the side and the back alley. It does not say anything about the backyard. When there have been issues at the back of my property where there's trees hanging over the alleyways, it's been directed to me specifically. On this, I didn't believe there was an issue because the backyard wasn't even mentioned on the notice. So I took care of the areas I was expected to cut. I can't do more than what I was asked to do.
Well, believe me, I've had rental houses too, and I can know what happens with renters, and you've been at this game for a while too.
Well, and Carl does not always have the best health. Several people from the town besides Garrett have dealt with him in the past. Generally, there's been good communication. They explain what they want him to do. He takes the time to get it done as best that he can. In this case, he didn't discuss any of this with me until after the fact. And my understanding is he actually doesn't remember most of the conversations with Garrett. I don't know to what extent that reasoning is, but I've had issues this last year with him in other perspectives that his memory isn't the best. And I take that to the isolation issues from COVID. That was the reasoning with me mentioning that, because he's not the only one that I'm dealing with that is dealing with that. And I'm trying to help and assist other people of all ages in the community to help look after their responsibilities, but I am only one person. I just know that this wasn't dealt with the way I think that it would have been. I did discuss it sort of in the background without using names and situations with several of the other officers in other communities, and just ask them what their procedure or what their take would be. And the last thing they want to do is not work with the homeowner. I'm the homeowner. I don't feel that I was worked with.
But I guess the biggest thing, Rachel, that you need to admit to yourself, first of all, is that when we issue the notice that we're coming on the property, we always do it in person with the person that's there.
No, I realize that,
Yeah.
but in all legal sense of the word, you can't leave that responsibility to the third party to tell me. It doesn't matter whether it's a tenant, or in this case, my brother, or if it was an uncle or an aunt. that third-party responsibility still lies on the town because you're entering a private property. I have that responsibility provincially that I have to give, and I can't just say, oh, there was nobody home, or I did post it, whether it blew away or not, that's not my problem.
Well, I don't even profess to be a legal expert, but what Garrett did, he did serve notice to a person who is on title.
And I honestly have to say is not, in all sense and contents of this situation, mentally capable to be
Okay,
giving
and
me that
that's,
information.
and that's something that probably Garrett didn't know, or myself didn't know. So we will take this into consideration when we're making our decision, and we will inform you in writing what that'll be.
And in all fairness, I think a job was done, part of that job was done, but I have some agreement that I could see a possibility of paying for part of that job, but I had to come back after and I had to do all this cleanup, which was more than 3 hours to have to rake everything up and then make sure that I actually vacuumed up all the weed seeds because I didn't want them left to reproduce. So I was left with additional work beyond what the contractor had done. So that was damages to me. Okay, I guess there's no
Thank
other
you.
questions.
And again, we will get back to you through a letter on what our decision will be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Mr. Phil Rowe. Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. This is a letter, the email that was sent to Town Manager Cliff Craig on July 14th from a resident at 5822 54th Street. And he would like, sorry, council to address, speaking out about the traffic safety bylaw. Do you want me to read the entire email in its entirety, sir?
Has everybody read it? Everybody knows what the concern is here. The fact that Mr. Martin actually sent this letter to council, I think you should read it.
Okay. So this is from Jason Martin. I would like to address this to yourself, Mr. Craig, and to the Honorable Mayor and the excellent Town Council. I am writing to speak out on the traffic safety bylaw of our beautiful town, which somehow has left out the speed limit for our back alleys. I've had an issue with a neighbor driving his work vehicles speedily through our alleyway, which runs from 58th Avenue to 59th Avenue between 54 and 55 Street. I asked him not to go so fast for safety reasons, as there are several small children who use the alley to get to the children's playground, which is at the end of our alley. And in fact, the end of our alley is actually 59th Avenue, which has a playground, so the limit goes down to 30 kilometers per hour. The town bylaw officer came by to see my neighbor, and so I took the opportunity to remind him that there is a playground at the end of our alley, but that was dismissed as he only wanted to speak on the 50-kilometer speed limit in the alley. Mr. Potoporozny told me that there is nothing I can do about it. Our alley turns into the playground road, and so anyone going 50 must slow to 30 kilometers anyway, which is being ignored. I am writing respectfully to the town council and mayor to ask if you would please consider adding a back lane speed limit of 10 kilometers or 15 max to the traffic safety bylaw of Vegreville in order to keep our garages from being covered in dust from our very dusty back alley, and to keep the children, elders, and pets of our neighborhood safe. I look forward to your reply, Jason Martin, and my granddaughter, Fanny.
Okay.
So on the second page that I had provided council, so the Alberta Traffic Safety Act states that the maximum speed within an urban setting is 50 kilometers an hour unless posted otherwise at the direction of town council, which is section 106C. School and playground zones are a maximum of 30, as identified by a traffic control device sign for a highway adjacent to a school or playground. Alleys and laneways are defined as a highway in the definition. So currently, there's one sign in place, as you can see by the yellow triangle, which indicates 30 kilometers an hour. There is no sign on 59th Avenue, which would be heading westbound. The alleyway does not fall under the playground zone unless posted, because it is not actually adjacent to the playground or a school zone. There's no dust issues in the alleyway that are different from any dust issue in any other of our town alleyways. So council may impose an alley speed limit as defined by the Alberta Traffic Safety Act. However, we must be willing to enforce this in all alleys throughout the community. So at the end of the road is an alleyway. It's technically not adjacent to the school zone. I did the checking, and it's not actually adjacent to it, so we could extend it in this particular case because it is fairly close. But we do have a lot of alleyways that are near other playgrounds. So we would have to, what we do for one, we would have to do for everyone, so.
Okay, anybody got any input here? Okay, we'll start with Councillor Brodziak, and then we'll go to Councillor Portman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin for sending this email with itemizing his concerns. I'm just going to comment that maybe the easiest way to find a solution would possibly be to install speed bumps in that particular alley. I know that we have a few alleys with speed bumps in Vegreville already, and that could be maybe a step one to try to find a solution for this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Warland?
Also, sort of similar in that I appreciate receiving this letter. I think for me, the issue is I find it hard if we're one-offing or having different speeds in different alleys, or I don't mind the speed bump idea, but it's kind of where do we install or don't. For me, my thought would actually be I wouldn't have a problem imposing an overall back alley speed limit. I think that while there's nothing wrong being done because we're following, the way the regulations are, I do think it's fair to say that we shouldn't be seeing a back alley have the same speed as the roadway it's by. I mean, it's fair to say that we can't see what's coming out of the small spaces between garages, with fences that are in the back alleys, often where we also have garbage bins that are in the alleys. So I would, while not jumping to say exactly what that speed limit has to be, I would be open to the idea of just having outright a speed limit that would be in the alleys. I understand that there is some enforcement for that, but as well, that's no different than the fact that there's enforcement on our regular roads. I mean, we can only catch what is seen when our officers are there.
Councillor Waters?
I was going to press the wrong button, thought we were on Zoom. Myself, I'm just kind of taken aback thinking somebody going 50 down a back alley. That's very concerning. Maybe a little more monitoring would be needed there. Maybe that's a place to put our sign, our speed sign, I don't know. The suggestion of the placement of the sign on 59th Avenue, so that's just slowing people coming around that one curve, correct? Into the playground area? Like, that would be one that would be more necessary according to our bylaws?
Yeah, so the one sign that's already in place is on 54th Street, and it's heading northbound just as people come around the curve. So there is no sign going westbound. So as if people come off 53rd and turn towards the playground, there's no sign there.
Okay.
And I honestly can't remember if there ever was one there, but that is where we could place another sign. And again, it would be at council's direction. We could put a sign by the alleyway, but it's the roadway that's adjacent to the playground. So the only road that's really adjacent to the playground is that short stretch of 59th Avenue.
Because those signs then aren't addressing the alleyway themselves.
No.
And as Councillor Warwa said, I'd like to see something, to change that, because 50 down there, any back alley is concerning.
Councillor Lamco?
Thanks, Your Worship. And Jason, thanks for sending your letter or your email for us to discuss. I do believe the email is dated July 14th, so we're 1 week short of 2 months. Now, since the officer went and talked to the neighbor, has this resolved itself? And we're talking one person driving in excessive speed. We're not talking the whole neighborhood, and we're now going to put signs in the whole community. I just don't believe, I think it's isolated to one individual. There's only one person there that has work trucks that goes in the alley. So I'm of the mindset, maybe this has solved itself.
Okay. Councillor Barry goes next, and then you. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm of a mindset as well that I don't want to get into making things community-wide, but I do agree that 50 kilometers is a bit unreasonable. And I would just like to note that on August the 6th, Edmonton, in all residential areas, the speed limit was reduced to 40 kilometers per hour on all residential streets unless otherwise posted. So they recognize and felt that reducing the speed on their residential streets would reduce accidents and problems. And I think it is food for thought for us to consider in the future as to whether or not back alleys need to have some special concern. I would not support reducing our residential streets to 40 kilometers. However, I think that in a rural area, most traffic is a little bit more reasonable than in a large city. That does not address the situation here. I'm of a mindset of Councillor Lemko. I would like to have this readdressed to find out whether the situation is still ongoing. And it would seem more reasonable to address the local situation of one back alley with speed bumps and make it such that maybe the individual would respectfully slow down. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Riddick?
Similar to my colleagues, I think safety of the community is important, and the City of Edmonton study I was going to reference has a lot of data talking about the rate of speed and the relationship to the cost to the city. So it was an actual direct correlation between reducing speed and saving costs, as well as providing better safety to the community. That said, I believe it was a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that we as council addressed the speed in school and playground zone areas. And I wonder if the signage here wasn't sufficient. I would suggest that perhaps there needs to be another placement, maybe going to take a look at it again, because I don't know that it's addressing this particular alley for sure, but I wonder if it's not worthwhile just to take a look and make sure that it's placed sufficiently, especially since we're going to be expanding that park area. All that said, we're talking about an individual disagreement and a discrepancy with one person. I don't think that the cost that would be incurred by putting the speed bumps at this particular location would be appropriate, although they might be definitely a deterrent for speeding. I think this might be an isolated incident that needs a little bit more pointed conversation. But I do feel like this also brings up a little bit of a refresh. Maybe we need to take a look if we're looking at signage at the playground and park areas. We've updated and changed some of our areas, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a look and see if these ones are in fact where they should be.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to apologize to Mr. Martin because his email was 2 months old before I seen it. The Alberta Traffic Safety Act states that in urban settings, 50 kilometers, I have a problem with people going 50 kilometers in an alley. I have a serious problem with that. That is crazy. I mean, just thinking about my own children, and they used to jump out the back gate and go 2 doors into the neighbor's gate. There's no way somebody doing 50 would be able to stop without hitting my child. I think we need to take a good look at this. I mean, I would like to get some more information. Do other communities have different speed zones in their alley? I mean, I don't see a lot of people speeding in alleys in our community. I really don't think it's a huge problem. But if they're allowed to go 50 legally, that raises a problem. That's a concern for me. If someone's actually allowed to go 50 kilometers an hour, a kid could jump out between any of our garbage collection barrels and recycling cans. I mean, I find that's a problem. So I would like to get a little more information about some other communities, and is there anybody else out there? I mean, I'm not in favor of putting up speed traps in the alleys, but I've never really considered going 50 kilometers an hour in an alley. but I didn't know it was you could legally do it. I think that's a very big concern, I really do. And if it takes us lowering the speeds in the alley to 30 kilometers, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it's an isolated case, there's one person right now, and the overreaction that you think that we may be taking, but I just don't see people speeding, but I didn't know they were allowed to go that fast. Call me, I don't know what, maybe, uninformed, but I just find it kind of crazy that people are allowed to go 50 in an alley. So could you get us a little more information about this? For our next meeting, are there communities out there that have speed limits on alleys?
I will do that research for you.
And maybe talk to our local Rcmp, the people that we pay, what are their thoughts on it? I mean, I just know it's not a big problem. I don't see it happening. But is everybody okay with that decision? That we'll take some information and move from there? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so workplace visitor safety policy.
Yes, thank you, Worship Council. This before you is the workplace visitor safety policy. This has been presented by OH&S department. This is a core audit requirement. Our core audit for the community will be taking place in a couple of weeks. This is a policy and administrative procedure framework for management that allows us to ensure the safety of visitors and staff in our buildings as required by the OH&S Act. This was an action item for 2021's our health and safety audit for 2020. This was a 2021 action item that is now here in front of you. And basically the overall concept of this is that we're limiting the entry of non-town people into our buildings. They require entry approval at non-public buildings. Council has already approved some security measures this year at some facilities. So admin is a great example where before general public could just walk in and go straight into the admin offices. That no longer exists. Public Works was very similar as well. They could walk into the building and they had direct access to our staff. That's not the case anymore. This also includes check-in procedures for emergencies. So if we do have contractors or we have somebody visiting in the building, that there's some sort of an accountability system in place, a sign-in. So if there was ever an emergency, we know that when everybody gets to our muster point, that who is responsible for who. So just an example would be our IT consultants. We don't follow them throughout the building when they're doing their thing, but they are, say, alone in the server room working. If for some reason if Mr. Casey is the one that's had them come in to do the work, if he happened to step out and there was an emergency in the building while they're still continuing their work, do we know that those people are in the building and what to do and who's responsible for them? So these policies are not unique to any buildings. This was been an action item for a couple of years that we finally got done. And basically it's also to keep people out of high hazard areas. So for instance, the public workshop, if the garage doors are open on a nice sunny day, we don't want somebody just walking into a high hazard area and say the server room. So basically this policy is required for our audit, and there's nothing totally that's not unique to any large business like us. So.
Well, we get it. It's a requirement for a core. So everybody's gone through it. Is there any concerns that anybody sees in there that wants to change the dress? Because we'll be voting on this on Monday. Okay, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. As to some author notes that are sprinkled through there, I would agree with the recommendation on your 2.12 to delete that as fundraising. And you have an author's note on 6.2 regarding fundraiser. So I think that both of those, as marked there on my copy, sorry. Go ahead, Sandra.
Actually, those are internal notes. You shouldn't actually have gotten a copy.
Well, I do have them,
Okay.
and I'm just agreeing with the comments that are there, if that is,
Because nobody else has them, if,
Yeah, I didn't see the.
so that's just why I'm pointing it out, is not everybody apparently has them. So I'm unsure why your copy, it should have been loaded as a,
gee, I guess I was privileged, but I do agree with the edits that are marked there, just so that you know. So if a copy is coming down to us Monday night, I would assume that it would be a clean copy with those edits done.
You should see ours, it's not even in there. They already edited.
Okay,
That's good, though.
all right, fine, thank you. I guess I have nothing further to say.
Councilor Rudick.
So this is a very specific question, and it is with regards to visitors actually entering our businesses or our locations. So 4.6, it refers to the fact that visitors must display a visitor pass identifying the individual as an authorized visitor. So I guess procedurally, I'm just curious how that's going to happen, and in what instances, how would that happen? So it's been, I guess, a moot point. Thank you. You've got an answer?
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Cliff.
Thank you, Your Worship and Councillor. This is the policy, and within the policy, it says that we will have, we've laid out the requirements. We will develop administratively the procedure on how we do those. But this is the actual policy, okay? That if we state in here that visitors must display a pass identifying, as that example, that the individual is an authorized visitor, we will stipulate what the procedure is on issuing a pass and how it's tracked, okay?
Yeah, I've worked on lots of locations, and without that visitor pass, you don't get pretty much past the front gate, so. So is there any other corrections or any other changes anybody wants to see before Monday? Seeing none, okay, thank you, and keeping us compliant with core is a big thing, so. Okay, up next, what do you got?
And the next one is psychological health and safety policy. And again, this is a new core audit requirement. This is an addition by Alberta Labor under the OH&S requirements. This policy provides the policy and administrative procedure for management to ensure that we provide proper services to our staff in the wake of a serious event. So that could be anything from harassment, a critical or traumatic incident, an emergency call, robbery, an employee death. Again, this is the policy. We'll be developing a procedure of actually how. So if there is a traumatic event that deals with our staff, that we have a process in place on how we ensure their well-being after that event. And that could be anything from a fire call to an incident with any one of our town staff. So again, this is a core audit requirement that we'll be looking for this year. And this is new from Alberta Labor in 2021.
Okay, so I have a question. Our firefighters,
Yes.
so they go to some terrible scenes. And this policy, what we're putting here, helps protect them, shows them what their rights are, or if they've had some experience due to something that they've seen is.
So the fire department already has its own process in place of how we deal with critical incident stress management. So we have there's the team in place, there's debriefing after calls, so there's that process in place, but it's specifically a fire department standard operating guideline. The province has now said that it has to go beyond first responders to include all staff. So, You know, there has been in the media in the last couple of years, there's been some serious incidents with public works crews across the country. Again, that's traumatic event. A robbery upstairs. All of those things have to be included, so it's not just about first responders anymore, it's about protecting all our staff in psychological health.
See no comments? Okay, well, this will be on Monday's meeting too, so. Okay, thank you for that. And you have the Vipers, the draft agreement.
Yes, so thank you, Your Worship, and this was sent out to council last week with, this is the draft agreement that has been developed for the facility rental between the town of Vegreville and the Vegreville Vipers Hockey Club. The agreement has been reviewed by all parties, including our own legal department. This draft has been approved by the Vipers Hockey Club, where there was a couple of small changes that we did internally. This agreement will outline the term of 3 years until June 30th, 2024. It includes dressing room allotments, our responsibility of ice conditions, game and practice times. It includes the ice rental fees, include booking of ice, how we'll deal with delinquent accounts. It goes through advertising and sponsorship, sales and concessions. And we've also added a Schedule A, which is a new code of conduct. This will be signed by all facility users to manage any unsafe behaviors and ensure that the town provides a safe recreational environment for all our users.
Okay, so everybody's had this for about a week now. Has everybody gone through it?
Your Worship, there was one change from Councillor Barry. We did make that change. Thank you for catching that. So there was one word, it should have been term, not team. So.
All right. So basically, there was one problem that when I first seen it, it was the 45 days that we would go if we didn't receive a check, because if you look at it, over 45 days, it could be almost $10,000 being built up there. But the fact that we insisted on having a local ownership of the team and stuff, I think that we should be fine. I know all their other contracts basically state the same thing with other communities that they have a contract with. And I know a couple other communities that were hung out to dry, but the league itself did come in and pay the bills after the owner was removed. So that's the only problem I had with everything that was in it. And I think that we've got it covered by having local ownership and the fact that the league has a history of straightening things out if they go astray, so they would like this agreement done as quickly as possible.
Yes, Your Worship. So I will have an RCD on Monday for council to approve this agreement. They did have a camp last week that they rented their ice, and they have another one.
17th.
17th, 18th, yes, so.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, go ahead, Councilor Warble.
Okay, I have two areas. One, under premise, they indicate coach's office, so I'm wondering what that is and where it is. Or do you want to do that one first? Sorry.
Sure, so the coach's office is going to be basically our staff office upstairs, that they will use that in the interim with them. The staff have decided they can share that area during game times. We don't have a specific area that they have that we can give them for a coach's office, so that is where they will store their documentation. There's plenty of room up there, and most of the times they're probably going to be in either the office upstairs or they're going to be in the skate sharpening room having a discussion in between periods, and then they're in the dressing room with the team having their pre-talks. So.
Okay, perfect. And then the second one that I had noticed was talking about the parking a little bit, I see that they're saying permitting parking to the south, which isn't something we've ever done before, as in keeping a designated and specific area for any one group to have there. Also, they noted that during the practice times, and I don't think we're talking about a ton of vehicles, I'm not concerned there, but it does talk about practice times parking to the west. So this agreement does not guarantee them held specific space or anything like that. It is just permitted use. Is that correct?
Yes, because they wanted designated parking behind, and we said no. We are limited around the buildings, so we suggested that their team parking in to the south would be the best location, and then that frees up more space on game time for the local people, or for the fans.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense to me, especially during the practice. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have a situation where we were holding back, because this is daytime ice, which is something we haven't done before. So wanted to make sure that we weren't suddenly making it harder for people that are using our aquatic center or anything during the day to have parking or holding it. I don't have a specific issue with it, them having parking to the south. It's just that isn't something that we've done before. So we've had years of Wranglers teams, we've never had rooms or never had space offered to them to park. We've had junior Bs and they've never been able to park in the back. So I'm just bringing that forward because we are making a concession to them that hasn't been made prior.
Yeah, and I really, when I looked at that, I was thinking too, but the other users during the facility, we've never had, that was 3 hours booked every day.
Yeah.
In the daytime. So the other facility users, there will be limited space for them, so offering them that, really, it helps out everybody else. I don't think it was, and it's not something that we're guaranteeing to them anyway, that we're allowing them to, but we're not putting reserved this one.
That was my main thing, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Did I miss anybody on this side? Okay, good then, so hopefully on Monday, if there's no other changes, then you can let them know that, when we see that, it should go forward, so. Okay, that's it for you? Next up is Dale LaFave.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first topic is Brock's board sign.
Go ahead, Cliff.
I think you have to turn yours off, is what he's saying.
I think we should, while it's still under Phil's section, we should discuss Rachel Piach's issue.
Oh,
Okay, Phil was going to bring it up in his director highlights, but
okay. Okay, thank you. You're on hold.
I'm on hold.
Okay, so we're moving back to Mrs. Piach's information that she's given us, and by all accounts is what she's looking for is to deal with her invoice in some way, that she feels that there could have been better communication and that the contractor left the place a little messier than what she would expect from somebody that was charging for what the work they were doing. So any comments? With that, okay, go ahead.
Well, I think first off, if we can try to have some consistency for notification across our different departments, if we have, I don't know how we collate that data between tax notices, water bills, and all of those different forms of notification. If we can find a way to make sure that we're sharing that information internally, I think that would be important. And if there is a notification method that needs to be different, we as a town wouldn't be able to differentiate that. So we need to have that. I don't know how we have that as a process. Cliff, maybe you can clarify if there's a way, if, for example, there is an instance where somebody shouldn't be notified and they're listed as a joint owner, it's very difficult for us as a paper delivery administrative process to be able to know who and how to deliver that notification to. So if there's a way to flag in amongst all of those different various ways that we collate information, that there is something that needs to be dealt with differently. Is there a way for us to do that?
That's something I'll discuss with Paul to see if on our system what we can do. But as you know, although our system is integrated, the utilities and taxes and bylaw information are all separate, although they do integrate accounting-wise. So I'll see what we can do on our end here. Okay?
And again, we had never prior noticed that contacting Carl was gonna be a problem. I mean, our procedure is to contact somebody in person to deliver the notice. And it's not been specified on the address that we're not to use Carl. So, I mean, that to me, I mean, Mrs. Pietsch has brought this up now that she feels that her brother is having some problems. And again, that's something that we can take into account moving forward, something we didn't know. Councilor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the presentation that you gave. It was very detailed, contained a lot of information. My first thought is that there wasn't any administrative error. The procedures were followed the way that they should, but I would also agree with Council's recommendation that we could maybe possibly look at the aspect. There seems to be a bit of a discrepancy on you figuring that you should have received a letter of entry, whereas that was only posted. And so maybe we should take a look at doing both. That you don't just post at the property, that document also is sent so that there is a better paper trail, and maybe that might have alleviated this problem. But I still believe that the administrative process was followed correctly. The other thing I did notice, so looking back at your pictures and such, to me you make a bit of a valid point in saying that the notice didn't say anything about cleaning up the backyard. It does in fact say front, side, and back alley boulevard.
So, Your Worship, if I could, so on the letter, it says that to remove and clean up all grass and weeds on the property, including back alley, boulevards, front. That is something that, you know, we're going to look, because we've had three complaints, I guess, that people saying, well, it doesn't say my yard. I guess it's how you read that, so we are going to change that wording on letters moving forward. I've already discussed this with municipal enforcement, and it will be very specific. So all grass and weeds in your yard, and then grass and weeds on the boulevard, front and rear. So we're gonna make those changes, but I guess, you know, when I read it, it says all grass and weeds on the property.
I appreciate that, and I learned a long time ago that you're supposed to see things through the eye of the consumer. The aspect is it's how somebody else reads it, not how we that are dealing with it all the time read it. So I appreciate that that will be made very clear. I think it's an important fact that communication is one of the things that may have failed in these situations. I will agree with the pictures that they do show the after pictures taking a lot of debris on the sidewalks and et cetera, which I don't think is reasonable. If a contractor is to come in and clean the area, that should also mean leaving it in a decent condition and not spewed all over the sidewalks. So I will leave that for my comments at the moment. Thank you.
Anybody else give any thoughts? Councilor Waters?
So just for clarification, the first letter, when it's issued, delivered, how is it sent to the property owner?
It was mailed, right?
It was mailed,
Regular post?
yes.
Okay, so we don't have a record if it was actually, like, in any situation.
No,
And then there's a second letter sent prior to the notice of work being done?
and that
So
is
it's like
either hand delivered, so that is the notice of entry. That means that we are going to be entering the property, according to our bylaw. So we either hand deliver it or we post it on the door.
That's the second.
That's the second, that's the notice of entry. The first one is mailed, is a maintained property. So that's basically the letter that says, here's what we want you to do, and you have this much time to complete it. And then municipal enforcement officers will go and check after those letters are sent. They go back, they look, the work has been done, great, it's off the list. And then until they do their next inspection. If it's not done, then they write the notice of entry. And in this case, there was several conversations with the tenant that this has to be done. And then it was hand delivered to them. And we do, if there's nobody at the house, we do post it on their door. I mean, could the process be better? Yes, we could probably look at that. But I mean, that's what we've been doing for many years, so.
So the current bylaw, again, was just for the second, the notice of entry to be delivered to the property, not to the property.
No, the bylaw actually doesn't state anything of how we actually do it. The bylaw states this is what is required of the property owner. That's an administrative process that would have to be adjusted how we send stuff out.
Right.
So, and again, you know, we could do registered mail, but that is a cost that we'd have to incur and, you know, pass that on, I guess. We'd have to look at that in that administrative process.
Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for is the answer to the second notice. The notice of entry is delivered to the property, not to the property owner. So if nobody's there, it's posted on the door, whatever. But if the owner, you know, it could be a rental property or anything like that. Renters aren't gonna give that notice to the owner.
Oh, I've had lots of these, yeah.
You know,
Over the
so-
years, and you know what? Is it the town's fault that my renter didn't do anything right?
Right.
No, as the registered owner, it's my fault. I got a letter saying too, before the notice, that they were coming in. I received a letter that says this property is not compliant. I went and talked to my renters and they said they were gonna take care of it. They never did. When I got a bill from the town, was I upset? I was upset. But they posted it on my property that they were coming in.
Okay, so that's where I was looking for the answer. Thank you.
And just when they're posted, so the enforcement officers, if they hand deliver it, they document the time and who they actually delivered it to. If it's posted on the door, they take physical pictures of the letter on the door so you can see the address and the house.
So the question really is that Mrs. P. Hatch received the first letter. There's no denying that. She received the letter. She says that she was in the process, or an ongoing process, to try to get the property back to where it should have been. She was worried about the drought conditions and stuff. And then, but really, did we do anything wrong? Our standard operating procedure is to deliver to the house. And with the person that we're talking about, Carl in question, is on title. So that, to me, states that he's on title. Now, knowing some information that Mrs. P. has brought to us today, that maybe he's not aware of the severity of what the outcomes could have been from that delivery, that was something that we didn't know, and our bylaw guys didn't know that too, and it's not written on title, or we don't have it flagged anywhere within our system that we should, everything has to go through Mrs. P. Hatch. So, I'm concerned myself personally about the fact that there was a mess left from the contractor that this should never, ever be. I mean, we hire contractors, just like if we hire someone else that work for the town, we have a certain expectation that that'll be cleaned up and their job will be done, you know, what the expectation, so. Go ahead, yeah.
I'm sorry, we may have it through here. I've just been going through some of the documents. I just want to confirm on one thing, because I understand too, we have to deal with the contractor issue. That's something that's ours to deal with for sure. Obviously, I appreciate some updating and changing of words. However, for myself as well, when I read something and it does say cut and spray all grass and weed areas, it was to me very clear that that does include all, and we would put including because the areas that get in question is people often are unaware of if they're responsible for boulevards, and that would be why there'd be the clarification. So to me, it's not the notice. I do have one question though on, I noted that you had stated that you had both received the notice. On that notice that was to maintain property from June 3rd, I have a copy of the one sent to Carl. Was there one as well sent to Rachel?
On June what?
The June 3rd one?
Yes, she did receive that.
That's the one you received? Okay. I just wanted to note that.
I followed and
Okay. Okay, thank you, Rachel.
So I didn't know that we were expected to make a decision right at this meeting moving forward, but if that's the case, then that's what we're gonna do. I told Rachel we would probably write her a letter with our decision, but this is the way we're gonna operate today, so we'll, Councillor Project.
I'm going to request that more information from our administration, because I feel that we were just presented a 4-page document at this meeting. We didn't have time to read it and understand the whole process, so I will request more information from our administration prior to making a decision.
Okay, so we have one councillor that would like to get some more information regarding the presentation that Mrs. Piatch gave to us today. Is council want to go that direction, or do we want to make a decision today?
I also have one more comment, a question actually to Mrs. Pihash. Was there an attempt, following the June 3rd receipt of the first letter, was there an attempt by you to contact the town of Vegreville to say that you would be completing the work?
The work was completed.
Was there an attempt made?
The work was completed prior to my receiving the notice. The June 3rd notice was sent out, but I had completed the work between the 4th and the 7th. It's on that Form 1A, my notes, which is what I do on any notice I get. I put when the item is received. I put when I've gone in and done the work. There is no follow-up required because I've actually been directed by Garrett in the past when I've done snow removal, because when it snows here in Vegreville, it's not the same as when I get snow on the farm. So if I come in and shovel snow, and I know I've done a thorough job, I document it so that if there is a concern or another notice, I can reference it back to him. But he's just told me, don't worry about calling to make sure that you've done the work, just make sure it's done. And there is other notes there at the end of June that I had come in and taken care of the cutting, and then in the process, ran into some issues with the condition of the backyard that was in question. And then the notice to entry was never posted on the property to me, the one that's addressed to me, nor was it received in the mail.
Okay, and everybody knows the procedure. After the letters, the notices were mailed out on June the 3rd, and then we know that they were received. Bylaw goes back for a repeat inspection, and then based on that inspection, they then is when they move forward with the notice to enter the property. So Mrs. Piatch is saying that she has did the lawn a couple of times in between the time that the contractor was there, from June the 3rd. Is that correct? That you're saying that you had went in and done the lawn front and back and everything a couple of times before they actually entered the property, and in these pictures that we've seen?
Except for the area between the front and the garage and the back of the house, because that was reseeded, so that was the only part not cut. I had cut the sidewalks because I wanted the grass to grow. Well, there is some weeds that come in between the sidewalks, so we trim the laneway, so that if somebody is delivering a parcel or somebody else enters my property, for insurance purposes, I have to make sure they can access it without injury, I guess. So I just made sure that the sidewalks are all cleared, but the area I had reseeded was left to go in to seed. And that's the part that I understand from my discussion with the bylaw officer became an issue. And I took care of the backyard, beyond the garage to the alley, and the front on what's written on the 1A notice.
Well, forgive me, but when I look at these pictures, I don't see newly seeded grass. That's not what I'm looking at. So, I mean,
It's just the one area.
Yeah.
Where the sidewalk comes to the back of the house and then goes to the garage, that was the area that was reseeded, and then a slight portion in front of the camper, because it had completely died off last fall. So when we reseeded last fall, thing to do. And I was told to continue to let it grow for the season till it choked out the weeds and pull or assist in trying to remove what we could. I thought the grass was doing actually really good until it got gutted. And then I was left to clean everything up.
Okay, well, you know, the backyard needs a good cleaning to begin with, really. What it really needs, but I'm not here to dispute that. We're here to make a decision, and the fact that one of your arguments is that you didn't receive notice of the services gonna be provided of entry. Well, I don't think we did anything wrong there. Matter of fact, I know we didn't, because we served it to your brother. And now that we have different information, okay, I could see moving forward that if we did that again, and we don't flag that piece of property, then that would be on us. But originally, we've never had this problem, notifying your brother with any other issues that we've had over there, so. But Councillor Broadjack would like to discuss this further with our bylaw people and not make a decision right now. Now, does anybody else feel the same? Put your hands in the air if you feel the same. Big thank you.
That's fine.
Okay, so we have more than a majority. So we will have another conversation with our bylaw department before we go any further.
Were there any other questions that any of the council would like clarified?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, for me, more, it was just that because we just got the additional information on this last one, didn't have a chance to go through it. In fairness to you and the whole, including having our bylaw officer here, he read us dates. Well, I would like to now be able to actually see those things in writing, because to just hear him say off dates and try and read it to the new stuff, that's why I just in fairness to you want to be able to see it all and read it all again.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I wasn't aware of the issue. And I'm pretty diligent about making a point of coming in and taking care of whenever there's an issue and contacts with the officers. And at the time, I was dealing actually with the town on another matter and with Ken on another matter. So that's where my concern was, like, how hard is it just to say, hey, you know, we've got a problem talking to your brother, or he hasn't been listening, or we've been there 3 or 4 times. Nobody made mention to me that there was an issue, which I think is a little unfair because your water supervisor has dealt with me on several other occasions with Carl and had no problem contacting me and letting me know there was a problem right from the beginning so I could address it with him. And that happened this year and last year. So, and the town knows, you know, I've asked about how bills are being sent because even when he questioned, let me see the bill, I go get it photocopied and then I've asked the town and they've said, well, you're the primary, we have no reason to send him anything unless you ask or requested it. So I just have always been under the understanding that I'm the major responsibility here, but I've been at the property during this time on several occasions. That formal notice with my name on it was not posted on the property in any contents. Only the notice to entry may have been delivered to Carl. The notice that he has said wasn't delivered in person, and that's where my concern was. His memory or question of what happened to what Ken and Garrett explained to me doesn't collide with what I know to have happened. So I wanted to sort of have some understanding of the misrepresentation. I can only go by the facts that I had, which is what I did to help maintain the property.
Well, we can't confuse the first letter sent out. It's not posted on your property.
No, and I
Okay.
received that, and I legitimized that by the documents with the information I have printed on there. I don't think there's anything incorrect of that second notice actually being mailed, but I don't believe it was. I have had past issues where I found notice to maintain in trees, in grass, and not actually posted to the property. And when I found it, it's sometimes been on the date that the contractor would have been coming in. And I have notified Ken or notified Garrett at the time that, hey, I just got this. Give me 24 hours, I'll get the job done. And they have records of that too. And I've explained to them that, hey, you guys need a better process because you can't just post something and hope the wind doesn't take it away.
Well,
That was several years ago, and I mean, they have been diligent, and we've had good communication. That's why I found this to be rather, frustrating, because I wasn't aware of anything until it was already too late.
okay, well, and I get it, and we're gonna have a conversation with them about it. I just want to make sure everybody understands. The process that we have here was completed. I mean, when we delivered the notice of, entry to your brother, the fact that that's what we do. I mean, it's legally done, right, even when we post it on the door, that's still legal. So, I mean, I understand that this is a different situation than what you've had in the past, and we'll have a conversation with it. That's what council wants to do, and then we will let you know. That's what we can do. Okay, thank you again. Okay, now Dale, away you go.
All right, this is a request from Brock Mashmeyer. I'll just read the email that you do not have on the attachment. He says, I have attached a proposal of where I would like to place a couple of billboards in the town of Vegreville. I'd love to work something out to help promote business within the town. If you feel these locations would work for the town, I can send in the appropriate permits for that exact location and get the ball rolling. So you can see the first one is an example of Brock boards. What you would have, page 2 is the size, so it's a 10 by 20. So it's 200 square feet. They use screw piles to anchor them into the ground. He's got an example of the one he has in Bruderheim. He's got his possible locations, so remember in the land use bylaw, large-scale billboards like this are acceptable in the east and west ends of Vegreville along Highway 16A. On the possible billboard locations, there's the Welcome to Vegreville sign, the picture number 1, and then there's a yellow symbol there, and that's the billboard sign that he would like to put up. That is just outside of Alberta Transportation's right-of-way and on the town of Vegreville's property. The second one he's proposing is on the Home of Prosperity Park. That won't fly, but he's wanting to maybe move it to the west a little bit, maybe get on the 11 acres that the county owns, and if he makes a deal with them, then that's up to him, but we told him we don't want it on this chunk of land right now. So he's offering to the town on the sign on 75th Street and Highway 16A bar Welcome to Vegreville sign, the part where we would gain either 15% of the revenue as owner of the property, or we could use a percentage of the area on the board for our own advertising. It's something he would offer to any property owner. So the signs obviously cannot go in the right of way of Alberta Transportation, but they can go on private property adjacent to it with Alberta Transportation approval, and that's something he would have to move forward with. So this is here as information. It's also here because would the town entertain him putting up a billboard on the town's property at the 75th Street location?
Okay. Any comments, any questions? I would start. We went out of our way with our sign policies to eliminate out-of-town people plopping up signs. Would we have any input into the content on these signs? Let's say if a guy come in and he was advertising something that we do in town, some other business, I mean, that would be the problem. We, as a council, went out of our way to protect the businesses in this town by not having signs that advertise for the same thing in a different community.
Correct, and I mean, there is things that we could put in that the content is to be local business with a local Vegreville business license. There's things that we can negotiate into this if that's something council would like. Obviously, I understand what you're saying. And also the fact that if we agree to this, the town should have the authority, or the development authority should have the authority to pre-see, this is what the ad is, in case it's controversial or has something going, we go, no, this isn't gonna work for us, it has to be something different, you know, maybe, you know what I'm saying, could be religious, could be whatever that could stir something up, or political, or, so we would want control over that.
Oh, for sure, the content, I mean, there's all kinds of issues in this world today that we would not want to be a part of on our property, and so I don't have a problem, you know, like especially on the one on 75th Street, that land is sitting there, and
right,
and there's no usage ever for it.
We have to understand that if, say, he agrees to put it on private property someplace, let's say, just throwing it out there, it's in Trent's backyard for that highway advertising there, then what authority do we have as to what he posts, right? When we have none.
Yep.
But this one we could have.
True. Councilor Riddick?
I think it would be fine to proceed, and I do appreciate that if there is a mechanism in place to be able to not edit, but to be able to preview what and who is advertising might be a prudent thing to do, particularly if it's on our property. I'm just curious, you said that you would not consider the one on Prosperity Park. Is there a reason why?
Construction at this point.
So just temporarily is what you're saying, more the timing, not necessarily the placement.
Not necessarily never, yeah, you're right, because they are a screw pile and they can be unscrewed and moved and screwed back in again, so if he wants to do this now, this fall, obviously what he wants to do, we obviously don't want it in our site while we're getting ready to roll, but down the road it may be something, because again, once it's developed and somebody purchases the property, then that's between him, the property owner, Alberta Transportation, and it can be put on someone's backyard as well, right? We wouldn't have any control then, because our land use bylaw truly just says that they are allowed, and here's what you need. So we can't not approve it.
Go ahead.
So in that vein then, if it's more a case of timing rather than a desire or a flavor that you wouldn't like to have the billboard, is it maybe a good idea to suggest that it be placed someplace else on the the east end of town? Is there potential for it going across the road so that we do have the potential editing or preview capability?
There is that potential, yes, because he's also offering to us if we have any recommendations of where else he would go. I mean, ultimately, it'd be best for the town if it was on town property on both ends, because then we have this control of local business only, and we pre-approve any advertising, so we can work at that. But this is, are we going to entertain this as becoming a customer or work with him? Then if so, we'll get started administratively and see what we can work out that's best for us.
Hey, Councilor Barry?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's been a little while since I was dealing with signs and land use. I know our own land use bylaw doesn't say a whole lot in terms of location and billboards. I do believe that we were looking at it being mainly corporate entities, if they're from outside of the area. In other words, you know, the big corporation that sells everywhere. But I do believe that if we take a look a little deeper, that there's quite a bit of Supreme Court precedent set as to what communities can do in terms of putting restrictions on signs and billboards. So I do believe that we could allow these and still have some say in content and actually what is being advertised. Because I know that there's quite a bit of precedent set right to the Supreme Court of Canada on signs and billboards in particular.
Okay, Dale, well, it looks like council is not against it at all, especially if we do have some control on the content of the signs. Go ahead and start some conversations with this rock boards and see where we go.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some more information at a future legislative meeting of council, see how we're doing.
Okay. The Roundup Report.
Excuse me, I just timed out here.
Uh-oh.
Okay. The Municipal Roundup Report was prepared and was ready a few weeks ago, for sure. We had in conversation with the Vegreville News Advertiser that we had this set so that when it went to a ledge meeting, which would be Tuesday, it'd be in the paper Wednesday, so the timing would work. So you may have seen it in the paper last Wednesday, so there's a little communication issue, but that was the plan, but it didn't quite work out. So this information may not be brand new for you. We've got just some information Phyllis wanted to put together, and Tony to show you what the turnout was. It was a good turnout. I know Councillor Rudick had made comment on it before about it was well done. You pulled in, you were looked after, you didn't have to get in your vehicle. They would remove things from the back, and just to show some pictures to everybody and those that can log in that it did go well. It would be on the very last page, you can see a comparison of the annual totals. So it was probably our fourth best year out of 9 years, so it did well again. What's interesting is this year, if we break it down over the last 3 years, the things like this year, we're doing, the first year we do a pilot e-waste program. We're one of a few communities that have signed up for it, where it's not just electronics, TVs, printers, computers, that type of thing. It's anything. You read the list, it's anything in your house. It's amazing. It could be an electric guitar. It could be absolutely anything that plugs in is part of this, and they will recycle it and tear it down. So we're on a pilot project. So this year at the Household Hazardous Waste Roundup, we brought in 1,300 kgs of pilot electronics. You know, the blenders, the microwaves, the stuff that isn't typically qualifying for the e-waste. So that was a big push in getting our numbers up. What was the other one? Oil and oil filters. We were more than twice we have been the last 2 years. So we were doing about 3,500 kgs of used oil and oil filters. This is what arrived that day. This is what come in 1 day of shipment. So it was a really good turnout as compared to the typical 1,300 kgs a year we get of that stuff. So it was nice to see the participation, and I believe it has a lot to do with people being more homebound for sure, and it's time to clean things up and get it out and looked after properly. So that's my e-waste report, unless there's any other questions.
Well, we look forward to how the province is going to make their changes to toxic waste and how that's going to work. We're still, the minister really had no plan when he was here. Shouldn't say that, but they were looking at how they were going to make the changes to it, so.
Correct. One of the big pushes, of course, is our product through the Recycling Council of Alberta is the big push now is this, because every community got hit by surprise. And I know it's more of a budget item, but realistically, it cost us probably 4 times the amount this year to conduct this as it did the previous year. And that's a big hit for all the municipalities to take all of a sudden, right? So they're trying to get something rolling. We'll see what happens.
But it's still the right thing to do.
It's still the right thing to do.
Okay, anybody, any thoughts or comments? Thank you to the department. They did a really good job, the employees, and
Yeah.
it was well done again, so.
Good, thank you. I'll be sure to pass it on.
Looks like everybody in council echoes my thoughts. Yep, sure. There. No, seriously, we really, what you want? Oh, you had your hand up?
Well, I'll just say again, you weren't here, Dale, but when we had the minister here, we did have the opportunity to showcase the good work that your department does, and it is always nice to be able to show off good work, and that department is easy to be able to highlight. So it was easy to be proud in that location too. So it was nice to be able to be talking about what kind of good response we have for the hazardous waste roundup. It was great to be able to showcase the work at VMRF as well as the central drop-off and go to landfill. Not often that we say we're excited to go to landfill, but we were happy to see equipment in motion and be able to showcase that to the minister. So thank you for doing good work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dale. Corporate Service Director Paul Casey's up next. Huh?
He's all good.
Oh, you got nothing? Sorry. CAO, Cliff Craig, Town Manager.
Thank you.
You're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item is to do with ATCO Gas and Pipeline franchise agreement. This is an annual notification that comes through from ATCO. We have 2 franchise agreements with ATCO. One is for gas and one is for electricity, and that's the next item. On gas franchise agreement, we are currently at a 33%, and we have been since 2004. The maximum is 35%. So if council wants to make any changes, there's a process I have to go through notifying ATCO and Alberta Utilities Commission.
Okay, so this is.
Our 33% brings in approximately just over $800,000 in estimated revenue.
And we'll be seeing this on Monday. Anybody have any comments or anything they want to bring up? Seeing no other, okay.
Okay.
Next one.
Okay. The next item is ATCO Electric and distribution of revenue for 2022 franchise agreement. This is the same thing. We have a franchise agreement with ATCO for distribution of power within our community. The franchise fee, the town is currently at 10%, and the electricity franchise fee maximum amount is 20%. And our last increase was 1 year ago.
Okay. Any comments? So everybody's in favor of leaving these where they're at, I would imagine, because time we get to the council meeting?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
that's good, thank you.
Okay. This is advisory boards and commissions, a draft policy. In the amendments to the Municipal Government Act in 2019, each board and committee of the town had to have a bylaw and also the terms of reference for that specific board or committee. So in the purpose of this policy is so that advisory boards and committees provide input into decision-making. They are reviewed annually at the organizational meeting to ensure they continue to contribute to a sustainable legislative structure that enhances council's ability to achieve its objectives. So the reason is advisory board and committee members are appointed by council and can provide valuable expertise and perspectives to initiatives and projects. The mandate and purpose of this policy is, or the mandate and purpose of the advisory board and committees is detailed in their terms of reference, which are included in the specific bylaws approved by council. So the roles and responsibilities is the main purpose of this policy. They are to provide recommendations, advice, and information to town council on those specialized matters which relate to the purpose of the advisory board or committee prior to the expenditure of any funds. The boards also and committees also facilitate in public input on programs and ideas. Staff representation, we will have appropriate department staff representatives attend the meetings, and they'll support resources and the general liaison between the boards and the committees. I have included for advertising and marketing, because we do have a branding policy and guide, and just so that there's consistency, that communication and or promotional efforts being undertaken by an advisory board or committee is approved by the communications and marketing manager for consistency and proper branding. So, okay.
Good.
So if there's any comments, this will be at the council meeting on Monday night.
Right, you, go ahead, Councillor Rudick.
Thank you very much, Cliff. I think this clears up a lot of the concerns that are questions that we had previously. I do have a question that you don't need to answer right now, but the one that is perhaps a new area, or one that's being more vigorously applied, is 4.0. So the advertising and marketing. I'm just, I guess procedurally, this would be between the two staff. So that would be between the communications manager and the staff of whatever board, because each advisory board would be acting with a town of Vegreville staff. So it would be unlikely that they would be doing any kind of activity without the communications manager. So I'm just, I guess my question is, do you see this as a concern, or this would be two staff members working this out, not an advisory board that's directing a manager? Is that correct?
I would see more of a concern if it's not in there. And as far as handling it, it would be depending who the staff representative is, whether it's myself or a director, the director would be in contact with the communication and marketing position. So I see it being handled internally.
Go ahead.
And mine was just in the same one, and I think that, yes, this also clears up lots of the questions that we had. I just, my one question in there, because it says communication, basically efforts being undertaken, so the ability would be, though, if you had a department that has gone through the communications and is able to go ahead and say post on Facebook or Instagram or something like that, that they wouldn't necessarily be saying that they then need to approve every posting that goes out, more approve the process of how they post. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, so we'll see it on Monday. Thank you. I guess your next one will be, where am I at here? We're not, oh, the RCMP regular member pay raise.
We received this letter this morning, and it's from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and it's to do with the regular member pay raise. So, as your community is served by the Alberta Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I want to advise you that a collective agreement has been reached for regular member police officers working in your community under the Municipal Policing Services Agreement. The National Police Federation Collective Bargaining Committee reached a tentative agreement with the federal government in June of 2021, and on August 6, 2021, the collective agreement was signed. So the new collective agreement for regular members below the rank of inspector and reservist covers a period of 6 years beginning April 1st, 2017, which includes economic increases and market adjustments as follows. And they've laid out the economic increase for each year is 1.75%, and then they've laid out the market adjustment for each respective year. The pay raises would see the salary for a first-class constable increase from $86,110 to $106,576. Further details can be found in the ratified agreement on the Treasury Board Secretariat website. With this agreement, RCMP total compensation, including pension and benefits, is competitive with other police services and fair for our members and reservists. We are mindful that policing represents a significant cost for our municipal partners, and that you are currently in the midst of planning budgets for next year. We are working on understanding the financial impacts to your community and will share this information with you as soon as possible. As per the agreement, adjustments to current rates of pay will be made within 90 days of the signing of the collective agreement. Retroactive increases and the associated payments will be shared as soon as available. The provisions of the Municipal Police Servicing Agreement include those related to method of payment and financial planning and reports are unchanged and remain in effect. We appreciate your need for further details, and we are currently working towards calculating the financial impact to your policing budget. We will share this information with you as soon as it's available. And should you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact contacts below. So at this point, we do not know the amount. We have calculated an estimated amount, but we will wait to see what the RCMP come to us with.
Okay, but we're pretty sure that it's somewhere over $400,000.
Our estimate is between $400,000 and $500,000.
And by the listening, reading this now, because there's been some hope that maybe the federal government was going to be helping out here, but they don't give that appearance at all. So let's say we're at $500,000, and then for next year, that's another $112,000 added on top. That's what the raise would be for the amount of staff that we have right now. So the 500 plus about 112 for next year. And in this, they're not talking about the new body armor, the new cameras, the new guns, plus what they negotiated in another 12 days pay where they're not actually at work, sick days and in lieu of days. So we as a municipality are gonna get hit really, really, really hard here. And I brought this up 3 different times with the Solicitor General, and what his thoughts are moving forward is the province, and he has said the province is advocating on behalf of municipalities in Alberta, that the federal government made this arrangement or this agreement without any input, none from the province at all. And again, this is their biggest reason for pushing forward with at least some costing on a provincial police force, because we have no control anymore on what the police cost us. So I just want everybody to know that in this year's budget coming up, we're gonna have to try to find a huge amount of money. And we have no recourse whatsoever. The federal government does this on their own, and the province was not involved, and all that the federal government's gonna give us is a bill. Councilor Rudy.
So, just to reiterate and reconfirm that, our concern in Vegreville has been brought forward to FCM also, because we're not the only community that has raised this issue. I just spoke with, council at Mornville, for example, the other day, and you can imagine they're significantly bigger than us, and the impact to their budget is significantly greater. So, it's all scales of shock, but it isn't universally concerning across the country, because different provinces have different police agreements, because they have their own policing services. That said, this is something that has had a lot of conversation at the rural forum too, because it is mostly our sizes of communities that are having this impact. So we are hopeful that there will be an answer from the federal government. Of course, that'll be a wait and see at this moment, but I don't think that the issue of law and order is going to disappear, and Rcmp are an integral part of that conversation, regardless of whoever will be dealing with this issue in a while. So I'm hopeful that we might have some recourse, or at least some support from the federal government, because it seems untenable that anybody would have extra money moving forward to be able to provide something that every resident and every Canadian expects, which is safe communities protected by Rcmp.
And again, it comes down to the policing agreement in this province, where municipalities over 5,000 pay 100% on their own. So as residents of Vegreville, we're all gonna be expected through income tax to chuck in to pay the bills around the province for all these other municipalities and every other police force that's out there. Sorry, not police force, but policing in municipalities under 5,000. We'll have to throw in our share there, plus pay 100% within the town. So it is going to be a double whammy again. And that's why I've encouraged council to this point not to be too judgmental on where the province is going with the police force until we see some numbers. And we've been told by the Solicitor General, the Minister of Justice, that after the September 20th election, they will release the Price Waterhouse report on the provincial policing. So until that time, I think we should still stay the course we've been. We're very happy with the policing of the RCMP. That is not the problem. But moving forward, I mean, this is almost, for this 1 year, this is almost like a 7 to 8% tax increase for the citizens of Vegreville just to cover this one bill. And that's not acceptable. I mean, we can't operate like this, so. Thanks for the good news.
This letter will be coming to the council meeting on Monday night.
Good, thank you. Okay, so next up is me. Okay, so we received a letter from Minister McIver regarding a meeting at the AUMA, is that correct, is what? So we're definitely gonna take that meeting. So he wants 2 topics, or his office is looking for 2 topics for discussing. Who wants to start? Probably got a list of 30, but. Remember, policing's not on his, go ahead, Councilor Riddick.
How about the new version of MSI? So I think the money would be the thing that we want to talk about first, is what kind of funding they're going to be providing.
Exactly, so the changes to MSI and where we're at right now with MSI in 2022 being cut in half and 2023 being cut in half, or what we typically are bringing in. So we could talk for the whole 20 minutes on MSI alone, but we should bring another topic to the table. So does anybody have anything else? Go, Councillor Warren.
I don't know whether you would consider this another topic or whether it's with MSI, but I think we have to keep reiterating to them the fact that any communities that are acting as regional hubs need to have supplemental funding. Because we are constantly, and this is not that we don't want to, we appreciate the services we provide, but we are providing services again and again for outside of the residents of the town of Vegreville. And for the most part, the full cost is being bared by the residents of the town of Vegreville. I think they have to start putting in some sort of supplemental funding for whether they want to call it rural remote or whether they want to call it regional hubs, but there has to be another funding allocation that comes. So I don't know if that's part of it or something different.
Well, that's enough right there to start the conversation with them for sure.
Probably more than 20 minutes, right?
Yeah. So thank you for that, and we'll get back to his chief of staff. Okay. Sandra, did I get something with community features? Oh, there it is. So, the town of Vegreville received a letter from Community Features regarding our sponsor of the, Lemonade Day. Yes, that's what it is, yep. Thank you for supporting Lemonade Day 2021. Our future entrepreneurs learned how to run their own businesses, lemonade stand, enjoy the awards and the wind up, and as a group, they shared individual experiences with each other and look forward to next year. Boy, did I ever screw that up, sorry. My wife wrote this, she's gonna be mad. Anyway, it was too bad about COVID that it really slowed things down, the momentum they had from the previous year and stuff, so we're hoping moving forward that this summer coming, the next summer, that there'll be a lot more lemonade stands and a lot more youth in our community getting involved in being entrepreneurs. So really looking forward to it. Okay, now what else do I got here? Okay, and we got another letter here. Elnora, the friendly community. And again, they're requesting letters of support for the Rcmp and looking for us to write the letter, which we've already discussed many times, and we will be setting on this and waiting until the Price Waterhouse report comes out. So that's that. Round table is up next. Oh, go ahead, Cliff.
I was just going to ask before we go into the round table if we could have a short recess.
We certainly could.
Thank you.
5-minute break.
Okay.
Thank you.